All right, we're live. Let me just jump onto my page really quick so I can see some of these questions a little easier. In case anyone's wondering, I do have a lid on the drink tonight, so hopefully there's not a repeat of last night. We've been talking a little bit. Charles, how are you? Let me just jump in really quick before my ADD kind of kicks in. So it's sort of that time of year, right? We've had several good months of good rates. I mean, really, you could argue probably 10 months of good rates, maybe a little bit more. Mac, how are you? Over the past week or so, I really might try to make a conscious effort to try to put some content up, because we are sort of getting into that flex time of year when things get a little different, when guys can make some mistakes on some choices that they might opt to do versus maybe being a little more informed and maybe having some right choices. I say this in a lot of videos: vet everything that you hear, my channel included. I've said also this: I think it's really great that the internet exists and that guys can go and try to get or solicit help elsewhere. But there are some things that I just can't believe that I read from time to time. And I'm sure that there are things that people go, I can't believe he said that. Case in point is the last of the video this morning and the video last night where I talked about relationships. I sort of making the argument that you need to understand and need to be really cautious. Because there are times when relationships just aren't beneficial to you. So crypto futures, just subscribe. Well, thanks, man. Send me over a Bitcoin and then I'll buy you a beer. But I read something and it's on my phone. I don't know if I can find it. I don't need to find it. But here's sort of the question that an individual, and this is the problem, right? People in business or trucking decide they want some help. And so they go to these forums and they think that they're going to post a very legitimate question. They're going to get good advice. This is the problem I have. This gentleman or this person posted a question that said something like this: hey, sort of got my new authority. I'm going to be running, so on and so forth. Anybody have recommendations for a good dispatch service? Fair question, right? Now, you sort of have two sides of that opinion. You have the opinion that says, no, do everything on your own, go on your own. And there was a lot of those recommendations. That, I think, is tough. I would be willing to pay someone a couple % of my revenue to do nothing but look for the best available, most profitable runs for me all day long and let me go focus on doing the hard stuff. Hey, knock it off. But I want to go focus on taking care of those things, right? Jim, did you see my response? Tell me, I guess you saw my response. Or is that just totally random? I don't know. Now look, so what did I title this video? Don't be this guy. This may be the dumbest thing that I've ever read. Now, I say that, and I don't mean to be condescending. I just can't believe that someone would think that this would be a good idea on an effective way to run your business. So this person asked, anybody have any good recommendations for dispatch service? And you had those guys say, no, go at your own. And then you had Hey. Hey, can we just, Grace, knock it off. Grace, knock it off. Oh, this is going to be so this started going on. Hey, knock it off. Here's the problem. Whoever it is at the doorbell with Amazon. Hey, Grace, we're trying to have a live feed. Do you mind? No, do you mind? Grace. God. So, every time my email I would get an email today, right? I had the volume up on the computer, and it sounded like there was a doorbell. So this, hey, knock it off. Sorry about that. So here's the comment this individual made relative light bright. I'm gonna start a dog kennel. Here was the recommendation for the individual that said, this is what you should do when the individual asked if they should get a dispatch service. This individual said, you should contact a broker like Coyote and have them dispatch you. Just let that sit in for just a minute. Now, let's hit pause there. Let's talk about Business 101. Let's talk about what you should never do. Let's talk about how to run a business. When you own a business, right? If you own a business, and let's say that you have salespeople, whoever you have, right? There's a reason that salespeople are paid some base salary or whatever, but there's usually a commission plan, right? You incent the behavior that you want to drive. That's what you do. That's a really good rule of thumb. The problem with having a broker moving you, and let me tell you what this problem is, because not only do I think that is possibly the worst piece of advice I've ever seen since we've been in this business. We had this happen to us, all right? We had this happen to us. And I'll just be brutally honest. January and February is a really interesting time for me. We are running OTR at that particular point in time. We start running flowers in March. January and February is when every one of our guys are running really, really hard OTR. So it's a really busy time for me, but it's also made significantly worse because that is also the time that we are planning how the number of assets that we're going to need, the number of trailers we're going to need every week, the number of drivers we're going to need every week, how we're going to move every flower that is already scheduled to be grown to every store. I mean, it's a really intense time. It is also the time that I look at the numbers for OTR the least because my focus is just not 100% there. A couple years ago, it wasn't 100% there. And I learned a really expensive, really valuable lesson. We had a couple of dispatchers at the time. One of them had got lazy. And he had built what he thought was a good relationship. This actually ties in really well with the last two videos I did. He had built what he thought was a really good relationship with a broker over at Coyote. What was happening was this broker was doing everything great. Broker would reach out, phone calls, emails, hey, where are your trucks? How can I help, right? And this was back in the time when freight was really sketchy. It was back in the time when that dispatcher had to make a ton of phone calls every day, trying to find that right load, trying to sell our value, trying to get every penny that we could get, right? Hang on one sec, I gotta just respond to this message. So this individual was working really hard. And the broker was doing everything that you would expect a good broker to do. They were reaching out, trying to build that relationship. What ended up happening was our dispatcher started relying far too heavily. And in a very short period of time, a very short window of time, we lost about $40,000. 40 grand in a blink of an eye. In a blink of an eye, because this dispatcher had quite a few trucks that he was supposed to be moving. He was doing it with the help of the broker. What's the incentive of the broker in this relationship? The incentive is to find trucks, and to find trucks at the cheapest possible rate. And he was doing that. And it cost us a whole lot of money really, really quick. I can't think, if I'm a lease operator or an independent of any sort, I literally I literally cannot think of a worse thing that you can do for your business. I just can't imagine. If your choice, and my comment back to this individual was, listen, history has sort of proven that having the fox guard the hen house ends really poorly for the hens, right? I mean, it's just like, don't do that. Don't do that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about this the last couple of videos about relationships, and be really cautious. You will be taken advantage of to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars really, really quickly. Now, it'll probably be less painful if it's just you and one truck. God forbid for you to have 10 or 12 trucks and this guy having the ability to influence that. Don't do that. I would rather have a dispatching service who's there to make money predicated on a percentage of the revenue that they get from me. That way the more money that they get from me, the more money that they make. When you partner with a broker whose main incentive is to the customer and to his company, like, you're down on the list like 4th or 5th. Like, you sort of want to be one, right? If you're paying someone for your service, for a service, be it an accountant, be it an attorney, be it whoever, like, you sort of want, I want my company to be like, every day I want them focused on me, how to make me money or how to save me money. That's what I want. No, Neo, it's not a good way to learn, but I'll tell you what, the lessons that oftentimes cost us money are the ones that we learn really quick and we don't tend to forget, right? I'm just telling you, I mean, look, I come on here and I flip the camera on and I sort of bark at people oftentimes, but I am not afraid to tell you guys where we screw up and where it costs us. Somebody asked me the other day, what is the point of you, like, what do you want? What is the point of the Trucking Exec channel? And it's sort of that, right? It's just, I just want to try to help our industry be a little bit better. I just want guys to maybe think or look a little bit differently, challenge the way that they see things, sort of again from this side of the steering wheel, right? I just think this is some really sketchy advice. And the sad part about this is I could totally see how if you were a new individual, a couple years into the industry, new into the lease op or the owner op game, I can totally see how some individuals can go, well, gosh, this guy works for a big company. He's got lots of freight. He's got access to it. I'm going to slide in and get the buddy deal. He's going to throw me some bones. He'll throw you the bone, all right. I promise you, you'll get the bone. You're just going to get the bone in a way that you don't want it. Right? Don't do that. If you're going to structure your company or you're going to seek outside help, make sure that you are paying someone on a percentage so that the better you do, the better they do. Align yourself with that entity. Again, dispatching service, whatever it is, right? But man, I can't think of anything good. And if partnering with a broker like that, I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Mind blowing. That's all I can say is, wow. Man. Look, if it's somebody else, and listen, let me just say this, right? We have had some good brokers. And I'll tell you probably the best relationship that we had with a broker. And sort of here's how this relationship went, right? Now, this broker I knew really well personally. And I'll share with you as good as I think it can get. This is my opinion. This broker worked for a large company. They had access. They managed a whole lot of accounts, and they also were high enough up in the organization that they could book most any other load anywhere in the country from someone else, right? So if they lived in whatever, Georgia, and there was a load that we needed out of California, they could log in, latch onto that load and sort of sell it to us. Now, you sort of have to be kind of work your way up in the organization to be there. They were. So as good as it gets was this. They said, hey, I can give you I can sort of tell you what we have in it, literally. Like I would get the screenshots of what they were being paid. I would get the lane information and what they thought they could sell it at, all that sort of stuff, basically seeing their profit margins. They would send that to me in many occasions. This person would give us really good rates when it was somebody else's load, right? Because she was making like, I think 50 or 75 bucks every time she just booked a load, right? She made no money on the commission. Now on her business, her book of business, really, Briggs? On her book of business, you guys understand, the dogs have to go to the bathroom. On her book of business, it was different. And she would tell me straight up, listen, when it comes to my book of business, it's going to be, I can't give you as much money. Well, at least she was honest about it, right? At least she was honest about it. And that's about as good as it got. I just don't think you want to partner, again, in a situation or put your business in the hands of somebody that's financially incented every time that you lose, right? A broker is not incented, like a broker doesn't, they're not making any money whenever they give you a load. Typically, they're benefiting more, right? They can sort of cut $100 here or a couple $100 there. Like, I just don't get that. I just don't know why anybody would want to position their company in that manner. Like, does that make sense to everybody? Like, I've sort of been gone on and on about this for a while, but like, just don't do that, right? Don't do that. All right, questions? Ringo, how's it going? Mac the Trucker, Crypto, Neo, Walt Smith. Let's see, who else? Viking Coach in here. Charles Brandt. 5-ton Fluffy. Welcome. Grafton Barb. My guess is that you don't need a doorbell. Yeah, no kidding, right? Gosh. Man. So I'll just say hi to everybody. Yeah, Red Dane, really, that's the truth. It does not make any sense, Trucker, Bounty, Hunter. I just... But do you see my point? Do you guys see where I'm coming from? Trucker Assassin, you're late to the party. There was a situation where I saw an individual post a question on a Facebook forum saying that they were new to the owner op, new to their authority, and they were looking for good advice for a dispatch service. There was an individual that recommended that they partner with a major broker. And I just think that's a really, really bad idea, right? And I just kind of gave an example of how we happened. We had an employee that sort of just got really lazy, partnered, if you will, with the same broker, and they took us for a lot of money. And so I'm just trying to use our negative experience, our loss of tens of thousands of dollars, as an example to people of what not to do. So that's kind of catching everybody up that came late. And then somebody rang the doorbell and the dogs barked for about 5 minutes straight. So you got to miss out on that. Phil Friedman, no doubt, man. Only the lonely. Let's see. What would be an average cost per mile, not including driver pay, with today's fuel cost? I mean, that's such a massive question because, I mean, is it a new truck? Is it an old truck? What kind of fuel efficiency? What kind of payment? I mean, it just can't answer that, unfortunately. I can tell you, here's what I can tell you. Is if you're driving about 100,000 miles a year and you're on a new truck payment in the last year or two, with today's fuel costs, with driver pay, right now you're probably in the $1.80 plus, maybe closer to $2 range with driver pay, right? With driver pay. So somebody mentioned, I think it was Food Mooch, I mentioned earlier today, something about $2 a mile. Like, isn't that great? And with fuel at 324 gallon, that's correct. Mac the Trucker, I accidentally blocked you, but you're good. But you're good now. You blocked me? Let's see. I miss seeing his golf statues. Some of them are just, they're right in there. Let's see. You guys can just sort of see the edge of that shelf. You can't see them. Let's see, QAL, you'd be surprised that companies do not read the paperwork. Made a math error on a contract quote. We still won the work, but overcharged them by $60,000. Man, it happens. Like, and I think you guys have a sense of how at times borderline psychotic we are with some numbers. And but it happens, right? Again, that's the time of year when, you know, our focus is, we've got to figure out how we're going to deliver these 1,200 shipments over the next 4 months. And so a lot of planning goes into that. And my focus wasn't 100% on the OTR. I learned that lesson. And so now, you know, I spend my days with planning usually, but I certainly will always make time to look at the OTR numbers because it just bit us. Stuart Warby said, what's a fair rate is my question. Market rate. Buck above market rate per mile or just getting consistent freight? How do you want to, I mean, to me, that's sort of like Lonely's question, right? Which is, I mean, it's just, are you running OTR? Are you running flatbed? Are you running reefer? You know, I would say, yeah, for the past 6 to 8 months, I would say guys are probably averaging $1 above their costs. Something like that. Right? Maybe on the low end, you're looking at 50 cents. On the high end, you know, north of $1 on top of your costs. Neo says, Alex Express can't believe this is going to happen soon. What did I missed it. You guys are having a little hug fest, I guess. Dan says she'll turn down a good load to have you haul her load cheaply. Right? I mean, of course. I mean, that's just another good example. What happens when they can't move a load? Right? Then you're going to sort of get this. Hey, man, we're going to put you on this load. It's going to go from point A to point B. I talked about this morning in the live feed. They're going to tell you they're going to move you from point A to point B. And yeah, I know this isn't that great of a rate, but hey, man, we're going to take care of you when you get to point B, and we're going to give you another run, and we're going to make up for it. Well, all that just happened was you've now blended a slightly better rate with a crappy rate. And so when you blend those two, really all you've just done is run twice as many miles for a pretty average crappy rate. Like, you just put a lot of miles in your truck and you've done a lot of work for a crappy rate, right? That doesn't make sense. I mean, think about it. Let's just use big, round, sort of easy numbers. If you're going to take a run that's 1,000 miles from point A to point B and they're going to pay you $1 a mile, again, just as an example, but they tell you, hey, I'm going to give you $3 a mile from point B to point C. Here's what probably happens. That run's probably going to be 300 or 400 or 500 miles. So you got a really crappy rate for 1,000 miles. You get this great rate, or so it seems, but you got it for just a few miles. So when you add those two miles together and your rate, and you divide it, and you go, holy crap, I just ran 1,500 miles for a really crappy rate. So I don't know. Alice, how are you? Let's see, how long till brokers are gone? Man, that's a really good question. I think they're going to be around for a while. I really do. I mean, you hear the argument, oh, blockchain this and that, and it's, I would say a while. I would say at least probably the next decade. I'll be honest with you guys. I thought the Ubers and the Convoys of the world, and I still do believe. And in fact, I've had conversations with you know, some of those companies at a decently high level, and I told them that I think they have a tremendous opportunity to literally change an entire industry. The problem is my opinion, that they failed. They failed, or I'm not gonna say they failed, but they are failing in a pretty epic fashion because they're missing the target, the mark, by a lot on how they could be taking advantage of this market, and they're not. But I do think that clearly that technology exists. I just think it's gonna be, you know, I think it's gonna be a while. I really do. I lived in Florida in the 90s. Gas was 99 cents a gallon. Yeah, I can remember when I was 16. Colin and I were talking about this last night. He's like, Dad, how much was gas when you were in high school, when you were 16? I said, I can remember paying 79 cents a gallon in like rural Oklahoma. Dan says, big outfits looking for bidding steady work rather than spot market, no doubt. Red Dane just went from dry to greased, still getting screwed. QAL says, have you got insurance? Have you got insurance coverage if when a company that owes you money goes under and ends up with loads stuck on the truck? So yes, we do, but it's sort of, I mean, there's a whole lot of things in one really simple question. I mean, you sort of have, how do they go under? Do they go bankruptcy? If they went bankrupt, then you got some protection, but it's going to take you a while. You got to file. You still have stuff on the truck. It just becomes a whole nightmare. Knock on wood, we've not. I'm so thankful, but the two of the dogs are outside, because if I were to knock on wood and they would have heard that, we'd have had another epic meltdown by the dogs. Neo says 3 months will start to break him down. What are you guys talking about? Harding. Oh, cool. We can start. Thanks, Joe. Harding, I heard that you were calling for advice earlier today. I hope you got the advice that you needed. Big Billy, how are you, man? Thumbs up to you. Dakota, hey, from Texas, not from Dakota, South Dakota. Jim's running a short run at a low rate to get a long run at a great rate. That's sort of how you want to do it, not the other way around. Larry June, I don't use Uber. Their rates suck, he says. Neo says he doesn't like to see anyone fail, but some people just can't flip-flop, and the truck's like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Only the Lonely says, do I get fuel discounts? Yes, we do. We've got a couple of different vendors that we work with. Damon, welcome. How are you? Wilbur is in the house. Take more meds, I say. Here's the thing. I don't know who you're talking to, but you could be talking to me or probably anybody else watching this live feed. Assassin says, have a good night, everybody. Have some videos to chop up. Take care, man. Bearden, guess what? I'm going to call you right after this. Neo says, if you don't have around 50K in the bank, don't sign up for nonsense like that. Gary Roach. All right, Gary. Listen, we had this conversation in the last couple live feeds. You're not the most positive of people. I feel like we should change the name to Negative Nancy instead of Gary Roach. Let's see if he can come through for something positive tonight. Gary Roach says, it's all cheap freight because everyone took their cuts out of the rate before it's even loaded. There's probably a lot of truth to that. Harding says he really didn't need advice. It was just a test. No, I do have a spill for a sippy cup. So what you guys didn't see, let me tell you about this for those that didn't see the live feed last night. Had an entire Dr. Pepper. I was trying to be a responsible person. I was using a coaster while trying to do a live feed. And apparently I wasn't athletic enough to place the drink in the center of the coaster. I set it on the edge and then it spilled all over me and all over the floor. Grabbed a couple towels, sort of cleaning it up while I'm on the live feed, trying to do the live feed. The dog that I'm dog sitting came over, starts eating the ice off the floor. I didn't care, I was gonna have to clean it up. What I didn't see was that he was stepping in the Dr. Pepper and then walking all around the house. So the mop is the mop. I found the mop and so yeah. I need a cup with a handle. That's called a mug and I have them, they're in the freezer. Jack, welcome. I know a small carrier that will lease me a truck for 3 years at 80% of gross revenue. No trailer payment run reefer. Monthly payment on the truck and insurance. Good deal. Thoughts? That sounds really cool. I totally dig it when people try to think differently and come up with something a little bit more creative. Listen, I don't know if I can say this because Gary, he made it public this morning. For those of you that know Gary Compton, Gary has a YouTube channel, and I don't know what it's called. Wilbur maybe, or somebody knows, throw it out there, I guess. He'd asked me a question about a company that's going to be at GATS, that they're going to be signing individuals up, giving them their numbers for free, I think is what it was. Just got to come by their booth. And he's like, hey, what do you think about it? Is that a good deal or not? And so the answer is the devil is always going to be buried in the details, right? And so, so I kind of just glanced at their site. Now they do a lot of things, right? They do factoring and a whole lot of other stuff. So the intent, I suspect, that they're trying to make is they're going to hedge the cost of signing guys up, but you're just going to get your numbers and possibly not everything that you're really going to need. But even if you did get everything that you needed to be up and operational, my hunch is they're probably going to, want you to factor and do a whole lot of other things. It's up to you guys to identify all those little details and compare them. I also went on to say that now that rates are really good, I think a lot of guys are looking to make that transition into kind of owner-op land. I think there's a lot of vultures out there waiting to prey on guys that are inexperienced or that are impatient, and we're all humans and we want like instant gratification and that sort of thing. So just be really careful with some of these deals. So back to your question, Jack. I think it very much depends on, the truck payments and that sort of stuff and kind of what it all looks like. But, that certainly falls into the realm of unique and different and potentially really cool. But I would say, man, definitely look into it. But, again, spend time and read all the details. And, you can go and get, an attorney review the contract, pretty cheaply, right? So check it out. Sugar Shine, welcome. Larry June. Let's see. Bearden, the laptop might not survive another spill. I got really lucky. It just sort of landed on the edge of the laptop, my USB adapter, and like a portion of the mouse. So far, so good. Learn to say no. There are no favors in trucking. Let somebody else take the load. Set standards for your business. Yes. All those things, yes. There are not any Bella Flor sippy cups yet. QAL, the reason that you've not heard any updates on the court cases with a lot of the leasing companies and Swift and Prime is because those things get settled, right? And then parties have to sign non-disclosure and that sort of thing, right? That's probably why you're not hearing about it. Chris Tillman just took my 10 in the field island. What's up? We're talking about things that you should not do as a lease operator and an owner operator. And number one on that list is allow a broker to dispatch you. No stinking bueno, don't do it. Walt Smith, instant gratification is the absolute worst way to make any business decision. Man, who was I talking to? Golly, I don't know what it is about Arizona right now, but my nose is itching. We were talking about this, I don't know, here recently. Like a house for me, it's like, it's a house, right? It's not a home, exactly. It's just a house. The same kind of goes with a vehicle, right? I don't really make buying decisions. Like a lot of people get really emotionally attached to a house or a vehicle. Like to me, I don't, it's just a house, right? And that sort of thing. I think when people make emotional decisions on anything that they're going to purchase that's kind of pricey, man, that's typically when you sort of get taken advantage of. And I think that instant gratification can hurt you in the same way. Larry Jane, can I use Dave Wilbur to dispatch me? No, Dave Wilbur is really busy. Yep, house is just a place for my stuff. That's kind of it. Caslin, welcome. Some people like to be distracted. I don't. I hate it. Gary Roach. All right, negative Nancy or positive Pete? It boils down to this. If you are spending more to move that load than you're making, then you need to do something different to make money because you're going to go broke. Yeah, that's true, right? And that's why, I've had a couple of videos on my first channel that no longer exist. I've got one or two on this channel where I sort of called out those guys that say, man, it's just all about making revenue, and it's just not, right? Revenue is a component of it, but that is, if you are that person that's just looking to make revenue, all you're doing is just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You got to know your costs. You got to know what your revenues are and your costs so that you can determine what your profit is. You don't want to be that individual. You don't want to be that individual that is at the end of the year determining how much you made whenever you file your taxes, right? You don't want to be just guessing. Hang on, I got to read this text message. All right, so for that person that just sent me a text message who might be watching, got it. David Hassel, I'll try to get some shipments last week to the southeast to Russellville, Kentucky. Brokers wanting $23.50. Wouldn't budge. I had to book one. Grace, I had to book one load. Talk to the driver to get $16.50. Wow. Wide guy, yeah, absolutely. So understand this about brokers. Brokers not only have a list, a lot of those, even the medium-sized brokers on up, it's most certainly a lot of the larger brokers, they have a scorecard, right? It's sort of like how you performed with your grades. It's a scorecard. How well do you perform on your check calls? Are you making your picks and your deliveries on time? But even bigger than that, they are tracking what rate they give you. So the second that you start taking a cheaper rate, I mean, you might be averaging whatever, I'd pick $2.50 a mile on your miles, right? The second that you, and I know this because I've seen this happen to us. The second somebody takes a much cheaper load, we rarely see that $2.50 a mile again. I mean, and that's the thing that frustrates me so much is when dispatchers don't fight for every penny and they just sort of get tired of the fight because then, man, it costs us money for the next several months before we ever can get back up there. So yes, they very much do track you. Know your numbers, yo, no doubt. Why live in a big fancy house when you could squabble in a truck for cheap? Why can't we start a coalition to set standards across the board to take control of the market, or to control the market? Because when you say that, that sort of gets into that really nasty, illegal phrase called like not price gouging. Golly, my mind just went blank. Price fixing, and so that's really illegal. And people you'll just get slammed over that. Having said that, I mean, I think there are things that we can do to try to change that, and that really involves things like just educating individuals that are out there making decisions on the freight that they're purchasing and the lanes that they're taking and that sort of thing. Again, that was sort of the point of the last couple of days' videos, which is brokers are cutting rates in half this week compared to what they were last week. But the freight is still up significantly. So supply and demand is still heavily skewed in favor of the carrier and the driver. But guys are sitting there going, oh my gosh, look, I guess the freight must have just tanked. I guess I better take this $1.80 a load. Just let it sit, right? Let it sit, right? And you got to take a little bit more risk. But the second people start accepting those rates, guess what? Now they're setting the new high, which is significantly lower, which is significantly worse. Check your get Bruster, peekaboo. How are you, man? Gary Roach says, I tried driving slow today and didn't spend as much on fuel. About drove me crazy. Driving slower. Look, Gary, now you're starting to get into the positive stuff. Good for you. I'm proud of you. It is tough to do. I know it. And you know what the hardest part is? Driving slow. Whenever you're going home. Whenever you turn and you know that you're going home, it's so hard to drive slow. Only the lonely. Is state and federal road use taxes refundable on reefer fuel purchases? Negative. No, not on reefer fuel. Yeah, antitrust laws. Well, unions, they sort of do it, I guess, yeah. But that's why unions pay off a whole lot of people. There's a lot of yo's going on. There's a lot of yo-yos. Caslin says, brokers manipulate the market by listing freight in a different city. Man, that's so frustrating. And I get it, right? They're trying to be aggressive. They're trying to find a truck. They know that, you know, we all set parameters from like a big city, and if they've got a shipper that's sort of outside of that 100-mile radius of a big city, they know that they've got to expand that search criteria to try to attract, you know, truckers or drivers from some of those big cities when they might be in the middle. So it's a game that they play. I understand why they do it. I don't fault them. I mean, let's be honest. If we were in their shoes, we would do the very same thing. But it is frustrating. I do appreciate when the broker, when you call that broker and they are quick to say, hey, this actually picks up in middle of BFE nowhere, right? So that's that. Greg, I'll give you so for those who are coming in late, quick story. Gentleman new to the owner-op space was asking on a Facebook forum for recommendations for a good dispatch service. Another gentleman suggested that he partner with Coyote and let them dispatch his truck. And that seems like one of the most ridiculous ideas I've ever heard. Let's see, just put actual pickup location in the comments. I agree. Yeah, you know what? Put it in the comments. That's good too. John Miller, if everyone said, I'm not starting the truck for less than $3 a mile and stuck to it, Swift and the other mega carriers would love it. And the owner ops would starve. That's another reason that it won't work. Kinda, but let's be honest, right? I mean, yeah, they've got what, 25,000 trucks between Swift and Knight, and between all the mega carriers, there's a lot of trucks. But you got to understand, guys, the mega carriers, a lot of the freight that they have is contracted freight. And so don't miss that point. Is, you know, if we're talking about spot market stuff, that's sort of a whole different conversation, right? Very different conversation. Chris, tell me that's funny. Jim says what Larry said, let's get them, trolls beware. Somebody must have been trolling. Benjamin Duke, rates lower from the little town, different market. Yeah, they try a lot of games, and that's okay. Again, they're there to make money just like you guys are, and that's why it's important that you educate yourself and be able to defend your position. And that comes from cost per mile. There, I haven't said that in a while in a video. Know your freaking cost per mile. Understand the lates, the lates. I guess that's lates. Is that a new term? Understand the rates and the lanes, otherwise known as lates. Understand those things, where you're going, where you're trying to get out. That's just part of your business, right? And that's why there's value in having a dispatcher that constantly is in the process of looking and assessing the entire country and where things are good or bad, right? That's why there's value in paying for that. So, you know, as I've said many times, if I were an owner-operator and I dispatched a lot, I would be very involved to the extent that I could be. But if I were busy driving, I'd want to know that I'm paying somebody on a percentage basis that is there to find the best paying loads for me. Like, you know, I will admit that there's a lot of demented things that probably run around in my head, but that just makes a whole lot of like sense to me. Hypocrite Buster, I didn't see your question, man. I'm sorry. Let me see. I did read your comment now, but I'm not gonna. I won't discuss those. Well, here's what I'll say. Actually, I'll say that there isn't one now. How about that? I'll say that. Greg Gibbons says, if you know your rate, then you can make proper decisions. Isn't that the truth, man? Absolutely the truth. Little Viking Coach, cut out the broker, find direct customer. Yes, absolutely. Even if it's just that one direct, if it's just part of a triangle or just one direct customer, right? That's a good thing. Gary Roach says, Coyote will run you into the ground for cheap and heavy loads, just like CH. I don't think they're as bad as CH. I haven't booked a CH load in a long, long time, so I guess I really can't speak to kind of what the temperature is of things now. You know, Coyote does have a lot of freight. I've booked some good load. I mean, I booked a good one here, I don't know, a couple weeks back. so I don't know that they're cheap, and I don't even know that they're heavy. I see where you're going, but I mean, I think that's up to each one of us respectively just to continue to look and search the boards. That's why I think it would be so stinking hard to try to be a driver, driving 80,000 pounds, going from point A to point B with all the construction, all the four-wheelers, and all the distractions, and somehow trying to be finding quality loads for me to make the most amount of money. I just sort of feel like if I pay a dispatch service a few percent a year, I just, if they're just sort of worth their weight, I think you would be far more profitable, right? I don't know. Yes, only we do sometimes haul cheap loads to get back home. You bet. Joey Wild, all of this makes me appreciate hauling these cattle. No brokers, no corporate shippers, yada, yada. But it has its own set of drawbacks. Every part of it does, right? I mean, that's just the truth. I say it in almost all of my videos, right? This is a tough industry. Sock thief. I think I know the reference you're making there. That's kind of funny. Costello, any third-party dispatch you would recommend thinking about trying it? No, I don't have one that I would recommend. I will tell you guys that that's a conversation that, you know, we've had a lot, is trying to monetize that. Once we get, I'll tell you this, once we sort of get the lease op thing going, we're sort of going to be in that really funky spot of having more trucks than just one person can handle, but not enough to have two dispatchers. So if I bring on a second dispatcher, I'll probably look to monetize a piece of that business. So, I mean, we're kicking that around. Cheap is always better than deadhead. I mean, there's some parameters you got to think of based on time and where you're going and all that stuff. But, you know, more often than not, you know, the numbers suggest that, in fact, you should take the cheap freight as opposed to deadheading, right? So if you ran the whole year and then you track the loads that you could have or should have taken, right, for cheap freight that you didn't, you just deadheaded, you'll find out that you'll be several $1,000s ahead at the end of the year, money in your pocket. But there's a balance. I mean, depending on where you're at, if you can find a really crazy rate. I haven't seen a lot of crazy rates. I mean, I've seen some good ones. I haven't seen that I would say are like crazy, off the charts good. But that's just something you guys have to balance depending on where you're at and that sort of stuff. Walt, you're absolutely right. And that's what everybody would do. And that's why I don't understand why drivers don't do that, right? I mean, you sort of read these forums where guys are saying they're making $5, $7, $10 a mile, all this sort of stuff. But then you turn right around, like in the very same forums, and you hear somebody say, you should go and give your business, your livelihood, you should put that in the hands of a broker that has your business like 5th on the list of financial incentives. Like, that just makes no sense. I got $1,800 rate to haul an ADM load 30 miles. That's pretty strong. That's good. Puppet Master trucker. Let's see. Maybe it was a donation to the poor from the USA taxpayer. Crypto, this is a tough industry in terms of what is this question? In terms of how hard guys have to work, the number of hours. Look, the average, the average individual that just works a 9-to-5 job, right? They're going to work 2,080 hours a week. They're going to get a couple weeks vacation, right? 40 hours a week, 2,080. The average driver is going to work 70 plus hours a week. Most drivers aren't going to be home during that period of time. They won't be home for a couple weeks. They're going to miss family. They're going to miss, you know, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, all that sort of stuff, right? And then the work is just stinking hard. You're going to sleep in truck stops. I mean, you know, look, I'll say this. I was really fortunate in the 2 RVs I had. I would stop at truck stops. Typically, when I stopped at a truck stop, it was sort of that, you know, 2 in the morning. I just need to grab a couple hours sleep. I'd find a spot. If the truck stop was pretty full, then I would just go park somewhere else. Nobody ever gave me a hard time ever once about parking anywhere. But you know, when you get out in the truck stop, you look at the trash and the stuff that people leave. I mean, where you guys have to sleep. I mean, that's sort of like your little RV park, if you will. And some guys treat it like it's a freaking sewer or a dump, right? I don't know. So it's tough in a lot of ways. Well, what's the definition of cheap freight? That's a great question. I think cheap freight's relative to you and your business, right? It just depends on who you are and what your costs are. Thor's in the house. Welcome, man. Greg Edmond. Man, so look, there's a lot of guys who are like, man, this guy's such a jerk. I'm just going to tell you guys this. There's so many times that it aggravates. I don't know why, man. Like, I just want guys to be successful. I really do. And when I see guys misspelling and misusing words like then and than, your, and your. The other day, somebody spelled angry, A-N-G-R-E-E. You know, it's like, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter a lot of times that, man, when you're communicating with brokers or shippers, or like if you're trying to, you know, attract and show value and stuff like that, it adds a lot of credibility. I don't know. I mean, maybe it makes me sound like an asshole, and I don't mean to be that critical, but I don't know. Like, I mean, yes, spell check, freaking use it. Thor, I hated house hunting too. When I came down here, quick synopsis on my situation. So I put my house on the market. It sold within an hour. And then they wanted to close in 21 days. Those 21 days happened to be also coinciding with spring season. And so I ended up having to put my stuff in storage. I wasn't worried about it because I figured I would come down here, I could find a house I liked. The problem is I was downsizing in size of house and the cost, because I'm not planning on being here for a long time. I was downsizing a lot. I couldn't really, you know, we all just sort of get spoiled with, I don't know, whatever. Like if you know, whatever, if we just get spoiled with whatever we have, and downsizing is sort of tough. And so I couldn't find what I wanted, so I ended up just building something. But it sucked. The house hunting thing sucked. Can you interview Bubba Nesbitt and let him know how, and let him tell people how he's killing it? I don't know who you're talking to, but that's kind of funny. Sugar Sign, welcome. Actually, you've been here already. Let's see. QAL. If English is an issue, download Grammarly. Yeah, that's right. That's a great site. It is free. How can North Vegas have bad cell? Well, Lake Las Vegas has some of the worst. I used to stay in the Ritz-Carlton down there. They had the worst cell service on the planet out at Lake Las Vegas. I couldn't understand that. I know, some days it is cruel just to light fires, but it's just like I have a lot of pet peeves. And I try not to be like the grammar Nazi, but like there are times when you're just like, and here's the thing with the whole then and than, we had somebody that worked for us that struggled with that. And there was, look, there are times when the actual correct words or misusing the word changes everything. And then happened to be used a couple times in this particular email incorrectly, and it changed everything, and it cost us money. Maybe that's why I'm a little sensitive to it. Randy Spears, Thor's not going to move from Utah. He's going to hang up there in ski resorts. Utah is so gorgeous. What reefer do I prefer? One that doesn't break down. I don't know. We've got, my opinion is, you know, sort of, I mean, the TKs I think they're more expensive. They're about $5 grand more expensive than the like carrier unit. They are quieter. They're more expensive, but I sure prefer them. I didn't prefer them enough to pay $60 or $100,000 more, or no, what was, yeah, 60 grand more, sorry. So we went with the carriers, but we've got Thermo Kings as well. So I prefer the Thermo Kings. QAL, good night, man. Take care. Phoenix is better than Salt Lake. I don't know, man. Salt Lake's gorgeous. Phoenix is great during the winter. But yeah, anyways. Cool. This is a long video. It's almost an hour. We'll kill it from here. Guys, really think and consider how you want to be successful. And you need to try to place those revenue producing roles in the hands of the right people. And that is either yourself or someone that you're financially incenting to ensure that you're making the most money. And placing your payments, your livelihood in the hands of a broker, really bad advice, right? I mean, just really bad advice. So think through that. And like I say, man, just be sure and vet, especially if you're asking for information from individuals that, you know, might not have the best success records in our industry. You just got to be really careful with the feedback that you're getting, right? So that's it. That's all, you guys. If you're making miles, stay safe. Take care.